Max?
North
Hi,
of
thanks.
Invention, a Canadian poetry festival.
Now, the FCC in the United States doesn't care about internet live streaming. And so I'm just going to say fuck to start, just so that we can just get that air cleared so you can say anything you want after that. Welcome to the Kelly Writers House. It's a place. This is not a family show. It's in the middle of the day. The adults are at work, and the young people are tuning in around the world to what we're doing here today. I'm one of the founders of the Kelly Writers House, and since its beginning 15 years ago, proudly, happily, its faculty director. I just wanted to take a minute. Charles already told you a little bit about the Writers House, tell you about the Writers House, and then thank a couple of people. And Sarah Dowling is going to provide a proper introduction to the conference and some of the other details. Charles just covered some details. But those of you, and there are apparently many of you at various times around the world watching us live, and some will join us now and then come back later. Sarah will remind everybody to, in a sense, signal in a way you might not do in a room full of people with no one else watching, to signal what's happening, who you are, when you're ending, when there's a break, and we will keep the stream on the entire time. We're not going to break. So while you'll see an empty podium and Locust walk here in Philadelphia during lunch while we're eating lunch, and maybe you can take a break and have lunch as well. But we'd like to welcome everybody who's watching and to remind you of the obvious. For those of you who know programs at the Writers House, you know that we are not just a bit obsessive, but significantly, in a major way, obsessive about archiving. We will preserve a copy of this video. We'll present it whole on Pen Sound, and we will then present the audio, which we extract from the video and make it sound good, and then we'll segment everything so that all the individual presentations and individual readings and Q&A will be captured. And so come back to Pen Sound in a couple of weeks, and you'll see the whole thing there, and we hope that you use it in your classrooms, and just as you will some of the other materials on Pen Sound. We've had 15 years of programs, and to be sure, this is really the case, that if you add up everything we do at the Writers House, including just meetings and book reading exchanges and manuscript sessions and bona fide performances in this room, it's 300 a year. Which is a little daunting, 300 a year, and we're closed from, essentially from mid-May to, just think what we could do if we opened in the summer. We'd be dead, but we wouldn't be able to stand, but 15 years of that, I can't really think of a day I woke up knowing that I'd be coming to a Writers House event more excited than I am today. This is just a tremendous thing. We're just so honored to have our colleagues from Canada, and also so many colleagues who came from other places, including here at Penn, imagine that, to join us today. This is just really exciting for us. So thank you for making the effort, and we're really glad about all the collaborations that Sarah will describe a little more officially. I just wanted to acknowledge two people, really three. Jessica Lowenthal was already acknowledged by Charles. She's our director. She is just a completely remarkable person, a writer. I mean, there are people in this room, there are a bunch of KSW people who know what this is like. You're a writer, but you really think it's important to run a space that's congenial to writers of all kinds. And that's what Jessica Lowenthal has done. And there are people, I'm looking at a few people in this room who've done that in other parts north of here. And we take our cue, not as specifically as you might think. We have our own particular political situations, and we have our own architectural situations. But we do take a cue from the, from the Vancouver-based and Toronto-based and Montreal-based, and I'm sure I'm leaving them out, Banff-based and Calgary-based centers of openness and community, literary community and poetic community specifically. We take that cue. We're only 15 years old, but we know we're part of a community of communities. It's really important to us. So Jessica Lowenthal, who's done 1,000 details just to make this thing work. I just want to stop and acknowledge her at the beginning of the day. Typically, of course, she won't take the acknowledgement because she's busy setting up a chair. Please step into the room and let us thank you and acknowledge you, Jessica Lowenthal. secondly, and pardon the just personal effusions, but then I'll sit down and listen. Charles Bernstein, who really is a very modest person. I mean, he comes on like some guy who's the opposite of immodest person, but in fact, he's a very modest person. He doesn't like to be thanked. He loves to be loved, but you've got to do it in a kind of indirect way, or he resists. And really, we shouldn't go too much further into there because despite the F-bomb, you know, we can't really get into the personal idiosyncrasies of Charles Bernstein. He's blushing here now. It's just really frightening for me to be. But everyone here at Penn and at the Writers' House loves, is the word, Charles Bernstein. He's so generous. It's ridiculous. I'm sure everybody in this room has been a recipient of his generosity. And he really supported the creation, the invention, as it were, of this event and so much else. And he's, you know, he does get a lot of thanks, but you know, we should ratchet up the sincerity level of this thanks. He's really an amazing person. So I'll stop talking about Charles, but I wish to pause at the beginning of this two-day thing just to thank and praise my friend and colleague Charles Bernstein. And a humorous footnote, Charles Bernstein is single-handedly responsible for the higher audio levels on our recordings because it's probably because he's just going deaf. It's not clear what the reason is, but that's great. I think that's... So we get our audio levels up because Charles is always saying, I can't hear it. So, hello. And finally, and most of all, Sarah Dowling. Sarah Dowling is, you know, she's done the thing. She's done it. And may I say, Sarah, we all feel here that you are an exemplary citizen of the Writers' House community, and also, may I say, an exemplary instance of the way to do a graduate degree, the way to be a graduate student. You know, you're involved in your academic and scholarly work, but you also, it's got to be part of your inventive, creative work. It's all one thing to you, and your participation as a member of a community is just as important as everything else. And I don't know how well you're balancing it. Maybe you're not, actually, but we think you're great, and we're just so... You know, you hail from Regina, Saskatchewan. Let's hear it for Regina, Saskatchewan, which is, you know, it's how many hours from Calgary? It's far away, and you managed to figure it all out. And it's really important for us in our graduate program to have you from Saskatchewan be one of the people to remind us that poetics is not simply a U.S. or mainland thing. So. Thank you, Sarah Dowling, for your efforts, which are extreme. Sarah Dowling. So, if you need any help, I won't go into the details because we already started. If you need any help managing this house, I'm here. If you want to just get to a computer or whatever you want to do, just find me, Jessica, Sarah, Erin Gauchi, or any of us. We want you to feel at home here. There are lots of rooms upstairs. If you need a nap, if the poet reading is someone you just can't stand and you need an hour break, we'll help you figure all that out. So thank you again for coming. And now it's Sarah Dowling's turn to properly introduce the program. Sarah.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to the Kelly Writers' House for North of Invention, a festival of Canadian poetry. We're thrilled to welcome, as I'm sure you know, 10 Canadian poets to the Writers' House and to Philadelphia. And we're thrilled to welcome all of you here in the room and all of you watching via webcast as well. Charles and I, along with our co-organizers at Poets House in New York and everyone at the Kelly Writers' House, have been eagerly anticipating these events and readings for more than a year now, and we're delighted that you're all here with us now that they're finally about to happen. I've been talking with a few people about this over the past few days and just thinking of how North of Invention has had its roots in discussions that Charles and I have been having ever since the spring of 2006 before I enrolled at Penn. In fact, Charles recruited me to the PhD program in English with promises that he and I would collaborate on a festival of Canadian poetry. Had I known at the time what such a festival would entail, I might have been more inclined to understand these enticing offers for what they really were, threats, and I might have pursued my graduate degree elsewhere. Fortunately, however, my naivete got the better of me, and here we are today on the verge of 4 days of presentations and readings by 10 poets whose contributions to contemporary innovative writing are absolutely unparalleled. We welcome Lisa Robertson, Norbesse Phillip, Stephen Collis, Christian Book, Nicole Brassard, Adina Karasik, Jeff Dirksen, Jordan Scott, Angela Rawlings, and her collaborator Maya Yantar, who joins us from Belgium, and Fred Waugh. So please join me in welcoming everybody. Although I'm sure many of us are very familiar with the works of some of these writers, I'm especially excited, and I know that Charles joins me in this, that North of Invention features many poets who have not recently or have only occasionally presented presented work in the United States or on the East Coast in particular. I'm proud that our roster represents emerging as well as established writers, writers from across Canada, and writers representing a broad range of social and aesthetic contingencies. As you'll see over the next few days, whether you're joining us in person or via webcast, or over the next 4 days, if you decide to come to New York with us, these works draw on a very broad range of performance traditions. They make a series of thoroughgoing social critiques, and they will also utilize a dizzying array of technologies from the genetic coding of Christian Book's Xenotext experiment to Adina Karasik's engagements with video and pop music, finally to the lutrin that Nicole Brassard requested for her reading. And if you're unfamiliar with the lutrin, a piece of technology, we've got one here. You can come check it out during the break if you want. I'm actually using it right now to hold my papers. It's a podium. Of course, as Al was indicating, North of Invention would not have been possible without the involvement of many people whose commitment to making this project happen and to making it a success will be very much in evidence over the next few days, and has been in evidence over the past few months of planning and organization. I'd like to echo Al's thanks to Jessica Lowenthal. I'd also like to thank Michelle Taransky, Aaron Gauchi, and Al Filreis himself. I'd like to thank Max McKenna, and I'd like to thank all the staff of the Kelly Writers House who have made this event possible. I'd also like to thank the wonderful group of Philadelphia poets and scholars who will be acting as ambassadors to our visiting poets and helping to moderate discussions between the poets and all of you. So I would like to recognize the contributions of Julia Block, Janet Nye, Danny Snelson, Suyun Juliette Lee, Rachel Blau-Duplessis, Katie Price, Bob Perlman, Laura Newman, Jenna Osman, and Josephine Park. Finally, I'd like to thank the sponsors of North of Invention, the Canada Council for the Arts, the University Research Fund, Writers Without Borders, the Provost Interdisciplinary Arts Fund, Asian American Studies, the English Department's Working Group in Poetics, and our partner organization in New York, Poets House, where we hope that you'll join us this Saturday and Sunday for further events and readings. And finally, I'd like to thank all of the poets for agreeing to travel here and for sharing their work with us. I know that the next 4 days will probably be quite long and very tiring, but I'm confident that they'll prove revelatory, invigorating, and perhaps even transformational for those of us lucky enough to be here listening to you, conversing with you, enjoying and being challenged by your wonderful and provocative texts. So, thank you very much to everyone for being here. And Charles, I'll turn it over to you.
I want to also add my thanks to William Lyon Mackenzie King, through whose fellowship, when I just graduated from college in 1972, brought me to British Columbia and the Vancouver area to study for a year. And I also want to thank Dean Gage of the University of British Columbia, who said that in order to enroll there, I would have to sit for exams. So I called up Simon Fraser, and they said, "Oh no, just come." This is part for me of an ongoing project of the Poetics of the Americas, in which we try to engage with the 4 European languages of the Americas: French, Portuguese, Spanish, and English, and try to imagine the synchronous developments that we have. For us in the United States, it's often hard to understand the distinctness of the Canadian development within poetry, and as a nation it's often subsumed and ignored. And to me that makes the project in terms of the Poetics of the Americas even more important, to think about both the difference and the connection to the history of Canadian poetry and to the Canadian present in poetry. There's an enormous richness of attachment and connection, and we often can feel as if we're in the same poetic space, but yet the differences are very important. And I think from my point of view, I just want to say at the start, and to echo Sarah's point, that the appalling lack of connection with the range of Canadian poets in my lifetime in New York was always striking me. One of the things that kind of haunts me is that I never saw Barry Nickel read in the United States. He almost never came, and I think of Barry. And also sorry that 2 of the people that we wanted to come but couldn't come for personal reasons, Roy Mickey and Daphne Marlett, also rarely heard in these parts, but I intend to make sure that they do come at least to Penn in the future. I have to thank the Canada Council for helping to support this kind of project and for really being enthusiastic, and also for Adina Karasek's connection with the Canada Council that made this possible. And we are going to have hopefully continuing funding and to have additional events to continue with this festival, having individuals and small groups over the next few years. Unfortunately, Sarah won't be around here to help with that, but we'll do it here at the Kelly Writers House, and I thank her so much for making this possible. I did indeed say when I first met her, I remember at a bar downtown, that we really need to do something like this, and I'm glad that in a very busy time for her finishing her dissertation that she's done this. It's very, very generous. I also want to thank Steve McCaffrey for the title. Of course, the title comes from his wonderful book, North of Intention. You say invention, I say intention, with the double sense of north, both a north of us that's filled with imaginative and innovative works, but also perhaps a sense of being beyond invention, and that is the way in which we can approach these next days. The first introducer is another friend of Sarah's and mine, a fellow student of Sarah's in the PhD program, Julia Block, poet and managing editor, or editor of Jacket 2, which is coming to Penn under Al Filre's publishing. So, Julia.